I'd like to call to order the meeting of Monday, May 10th, and welcome everybody back to our first in-person meeting in a couple of months. And if the clerk would please take the roll.
Councilmember Archibald.
Here.
Councilmember Ashford.
Present.
Councilmember Lamb.
Here.
Councilmember Mosherak.
Here.
Councilmember Pemberton.
Here.
Councilmember Ruiz.
Here.
Mayor Rep.
Here. You have the minutes before you from the regular meeting of April the 26th. Is there a motion to receive and file?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Councilmember Ashford, supported by Councilmember Mosherak. Is there any changes to the minutes? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes will stand as submitted. We do have 3 public hearings tonight. If the clerk would please read the first one.
To hear comments on the proposed capital improvement program for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2021.
Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to address the City Council this evening on public hearing number 1 relative to the capital improvement program? Seeing no one, I'll declare public hearing number 1 closed. Public hearing number 2.
To hear comments on the proposed budget for fiscal year 2021-22.
Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to address the council on public hearing number 2 relative to the budget? Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. I just want to speak briefly on the budget as it looks for this year. It looks like everybody in the city of Port Huron will be touched in some way by a little increase, whether it be administrative fees or water sewer rates and stuff like that, but it looks like they're being held to the minimum. But when I looked at some, I didn't go to the line item by them because I guess I'm getting too damn old for that. But anyways, I looked at the budget here, and there's a couple things that jumped out at me, though, on the budget recommendations here. On the project, it's Grizzle Street from Military to 24th. And, you know, when we're talking about streets and stuff and familiar with that side of town and stuff, if you look at Grizzle Street and you compare it to Lapeer Avenue from 10th to 24th Street, it's night and day. It's like going into a war zone or into a paved highway. I mean, there's just that much difference. So I didn't quite understand why the significance of $860,000 for that project. So I hope somebody will somehow or another explain that. And I guess the other one is, I tried to visualize it on the map, but it says 15th Street project, Dove to Columbus. Columbus Street just is a short street off of Baird Street, and so it just don't make a little bit of sense. But the only thing that I have to say is when I see this budget and the moderate increases is, and I just looked at an email before I left the house tonight that the government is going to release some of this COVID monies and stuff. And it'd be interesting if we can help our budget by using some of these funds for some of the things that we're going to do. And some of these projects can be done with COVID money. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to address the City Council on public hearing number 2? Seeing no one, I'll declare public hearing number 2 closed, and we will go to public hearing number 3.
To hear comments on the proposed budget for the Port Huron Downtown Development Authority for fiscal year 2021-22.
Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to address the council on public hearing number 3? Seeing no one, I'll declare public hearing number 3 closed. We will move on to public comment. Now is the time if anyone would like to address the council on any item that's on the agenda or under our jurisdiction. Come forward and have your name and where you're from, and you have 4 minutes to speak. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak under public comment? Seeing no one, I will close public comment, and we will move on to, from the city manager, item 1.
Accepting the proposal from Conchera LLC in the amount of $51,994 for the purchase and installation of new playground equipment at the 11th and Division Street Tot Lot Playground with assistance from the Ralph C. Wilson Foundation.
Is there a motion?
So moved. Support.
Mayor Pro Tem Archibald, supported by Councilmember Ashford. think we all got a illustration of this new park equipment, which is quite nice, and I see the city manager is coming up, so go ahead.
This is one of 4 park projects we're working on with the Ralph C. Wilson Foundation, so this will be funded by grant funds, so it will not be used as general fund. There's a couple of things of some other natures that Nancy would like to brief you on, so if Nancy, you want to come up and talk about the other parks that you're working on as well? This is part of a much broader multi-park strategy, working with our funding partners, and I know Nancy wanted to touch on that.
Mayor, at the City Council, we're super excited to have received another grant from the Ralph C. Wilson Foundation. As I've told you guys many times, we have 23 parks in the city of Port Huron. 16 of them have playscapes on them. None of them are under the age of 20 years old, so there's a lot of parks that aren't available anymore. There's a lot of liability to having, these things, you have to continually inspect them. So we continue to work on that list that we've talked about a couple times as to what areas need to be done. So this particular project is like number 8 on our list, and the reason why is there's a reason for each one on the list. So we have Gratiot Park's number 1, and I know we've been kind of waiting to hear what's going on there. That's another project that will be, this one's for 11th and Division, the one you're voting on tonight. Gratiot Park is another one that we're working on, and the Ralph C. Wilson Foundation also donated money to that one. They also donated to Palmer Park, which you've already voted on, and it should be installed by mid-June at the latest. That one's super exciting. That's one, the big one that is very unique to, it's I think the second in the nation, so that one's pretty cool. And then the 4th one is at 16th Street Ball Diamond, which they've asked us to do a wiffle ball field there. So we've been kind of working on that. Some of the pricing came in a little higher than we thought on that. So Gratiot Park and the wiffle ball field are the 2 that we're still working on with them. But we were super excited that they gave us this grant at the last minute to do those 4 areas. So that, I don't know if there's any questions, but
Does anybody have any questions for, go ahead.
I don't have a question, but I have a comment. I'd just like to, just actually commend you, because I do remember the conversation. You know
Yeah.
how I am about these parks, but, you have followed up really tremendously good in getting back with us on this and making sure that they're in line. You said that you labeled them like number 8, number 1. What is your criteria for that?
well, we have Ben Pionk is our certified playground inspector. So between him and we had an outside person that came in to assist him, looked at all the components and kind of judged it on safety, on obsolete parts, and kind of came up with a criteria and a score sheet in that regard, so.
Excellent. I
Yeah,
like that. Okay.
so some of them are, they've been around a long time, and we went through a long time where buying park equipment was tough, so.
You can't even get your slide on.
Yeah,
Some
you
of
know.
them, go down to your
Right on
stop.
down.
Yeah.
So we're excited that they still are investing in Port Huron and some of the great innovative play spaces that we're trying to create, so.
Yeah, and our parks
Mayor,
are,
sorry.
So-
that's all right. And our parks are critical, to our neighborhoods and our kids, and making sure that we have something that is for them, to go and play, and it could be there accessible and definitely, safe-wise, so.
Yeah.
So thank you.
We're hoping, looking at Gratiot more as a more universal play area, so it'll be, that's what we're kind of hoping for in that area. We'll have some details on that coming in the next couple months.
Right, and that's kind of unique. Every time I pass there, that park is like loaded with people. Of all different ages, and it is, so.
And that's why we're taking our time on that one, to make sure we hit all the age groups and really think about what we want to do there, because it is a very busy park.
Oh, okay, thank you
Yeah,
so much.
thank you.
Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem
Thank you.
Archibald.
Nancy, I just want to say thank you for your leadership and your vision in all of this. Not everyone could have developed and recognized the importance of a relationship like you did with the Ralph C. Wilson Foundation, so I want to thank you for that. And definitely, I think it's fitting that we thank them for all that they've done, and they continue to keep doing park after park after park. And it seems, whatever we ask for, or you ask for, really, they step forward and help out. So a great big thank you to you and to the Ralph C. Wilson Foundation.
Absolutely.
And I have to
hope they
say-
continue.
Yeah, they've been very good to Port Huron, and I have to say thank you to Kim Harmer too, because she helps me keep all these grants together, and writing them and stuff, so, thank you.
Good job.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions? Thank you.
If there's nothing else, we will take the vote on item 1 from the city manager.
Councilmember Archibald?
Yes.
Councilmember Ashford?
Yes.
Councilmember Lamb?
Yes.
Councilmember Mosherak?
Yes.
Councilmember Pemberton?
Yes.
Councilmember Ruiz?
Yes.
Mayor Rapp?
Yes, item 2.
Receive and file the quarterly financial report for the 9-month period ending March 31st, 2021.
Is there a motion?
So moved?
Support?
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Archibald, supported by Councilmember Pemberton. Did you want to give a brief synopsis of this?
We're good.
That's good. That was brief.
There you go. You want more than that, or?
Maybe a little bit.
So if you can tell, our expenses are about 6% over where they were last year. We're at about 68.8% expenditures. You would typically expect us to be around 75% at this rate. Now, you couple that with the additional revenue. So when COVID hit, we dramatically reduced costs, furloughed workers, and really reined in government spending because we didn't know what the long-term effects were going to be. In addition to reducing costs, we've also now had enhanced revenue of about $655,000 of additional state aid, whether that be additional revenue sharing or COVID reimbursements. So we're reducing cost, we're getting more revenue than we had projected, which means this year is shaping up to be a very sound fiscal year. Our property tax revenue is up around $236,000. Our income tax is up around $452,000 year over year. What we do want to make sure is that we don't know what the income taxes will look like in the long term after people file and want refunds. So we're working on that right now. We did extend the deadline out. So we don't know really the full repercussions on the income tax side of it. But we are feeling like we're in a diversified position in our industry base that we should be fine. So two things. We were able to keep costs down 6% than where we were last year, and we were able to increase our revenue. Between those two things, I'm very proud to say that we've weathered this 2020 and now 21 very, very well.
Very good. Any questions from anyone?
Yep.
Go ahead, Councilmember Ashford.
Yeah, so it's like you said, like the COVID helped us, those dollars helped us greatly in terms of our revenue coming up, okay? And so we look at that like a windfall, kind of, for the sake of a better word, just windfall. And are there any projections per se going beyond that? I mean, we won't have this like next year or anything, so what are you doing to kind of solidify that gap in between there?
Well, there's a couple indicators that I'm really trying to focus on. Is one, I want to look at the long-term repercussions in property values, meaning our largest source of income is our property tax. So far, our sales receipts, so our assessor does a sales receipt study, our property values are up about 20%. We've added $55 million of new taxable value onto the tax rolls in the last year. Those are good long-term indicators. Our unemployment rate is relatively low. Our industries, our number one issue we're hearing from employers right now, whether it be large tier 1 suppliers or small mom and pop businesses and restaurants, the number one issue we have is a workforce shortage. We are struggling to get people to work for the city for our seasonal jobs. We are struggling to get programmers in our recreation department for these summer programming opportunities. Right now, unemployment is offering more than what people were making when they were working. Unemployment right now equates to just north of $15 an hour. So unless you are making $15 an hour or more, you're making more on unemployment. That represents currently half the people on unemployment. Additional, about 20% of that are within 10% of what they were making. So a lot of our business, I spoke to one restaurant owner today who said, his cook said, hey, I appreciate you, but I'm not coming back until my benefits expire. So the current situation with unemployment benefits and the workforce demands are really throwing a wet blanket on our otherwise robust and growing economy. It's difficult to say that, but that's what I'm hearing from every business owner. We had an executive board meeting at the EDA, and that's what we're hearing from our tier 1 suppliers. We're seeing something very unique happen in an industrial park where a couple of the suppliers are now offering part-time shifts. So they're hoping for the folks who do want to work, who have a full-time job. Maybe you want to go moonlight and pick up a 4 or 5 hour shift in the evening at one of the companies to earn some extra money. So they're now breaking up those full-time jobs and the part-time jobs, hoping that they get anyone to show up and get these things working. So
Talking about desperate, Another question that's related to that, I don't know, I guess I could save it for the budget meeting, but with all the COVID money coming in, and I know that we're restricted under the guidelines of how you disseminate that
Yep.
COVID money. Okay, in operating per se, can we take any of that money and invest in anything that we have that is outstanding that we could cover for the,
So I'm working on, just this afternoon at 4 o'clock, Treasury released their guidelines for the American Rescue Plan funds. That's the first time the federal government has actually put any guidelines out. They were not very helpful. It's 115 pages. I'm making my way through it closely, but it is highly restrictive, far more restrictive than I even first thought it was going to be.
oh, okay.
So working on one of the things we're looking at is revenue replacement, meaning McMorran has lost, between the year and a half of not being able to operate, has lost more than $1 million and some dollars in revenue. It's looking like we will be able to reimburse ourselves for some of those losses. Building department, building permits are down. Revenue in various departments, recreation didn't sell a lot of event programs, so their revenue's down. It looks like we can do some type of supplemental replacement. But then we also want to look into key investments that would reduce long-term operating costs in the future. For instance, one of the key pillars of the American Rescue Plan was childcare and childcare facilities. Palmer Park is a licensed seasonal daycare facility, childcare facility. We probably can use that to enhance that capacity, to make that figure up to 21st century, that facility up to 21st century standards. So we're looking at compliance and reporting with the American Rescue Plan, what qualifies, what are the compliance issues look like, and then what are some strategic investments we can bring to council. I don't have all the answers. I'm making my way through it. I've called about 4 or 5 of my colleagues from around the state. They're just as confused as I am, which actually made me feel a lot better. So we'll hopefully be able to provide better clarity to the policymakers quickly.
Yeah, we got a meeting tomorrow on that, trying to detail some of that. But I think the good thing about the rescue plan is that we don't have to spend that money just like this the next year. They had extended that, so that's good to our advantage, so.
Yeah, and I think operationally, the city of Port Huron is financially sound. COVID has not hurt us financially
Oh, it helped.
on an operational aspect.
Right, yeah.
We're meeting with S&P tomorrow, and I had a meeting with our financial advisor today, and they said, how is the city doing with COVID? I said, well, who's asking? I said, if you're asking, we're doing great, but if the feds are asking, we're barely getting by. Depends on who's asking.
Yeah.
But there is a significant amount of funding. So we do want to look at the long term. What are the long-term capital needs?
Right.
So part of the American Rescue Plan is protecting and making sustainable public services. So what are the costs in the future that could hinder our ability to deliver public services? Can we address those now? I'm not sure. I know to some degree we can, but to what scope and magnitude, that's what will be left to decide.
Yeah, okay. All right, thank you. Thanks, Mira.
I will say $19 million, the reporting, the compliance, that's going to be very difficult. And so I was reading through it today, some of the compliance and reporting mechanism, and it's a nightmare. I mean, it's just absolutely a nightmare, so. But we'll get through it.
Any other questions for Mr. Freed before he sits down? Okay. We will take the vote on item 2.
Councilmember Ashford?
Yes?
Councilmember Lamb?
Yes.
Councilmember Mosherak?
Yes.
Councilmember Pemberton?
Yes.
Councilmember Ruiz?
Yes.
Councilmember Archibald?
Yes.
Mayor Rep.
Yes. We'll move on to resolutions. Number 1, please.
Authorizing 14 payments.
Is there a motion?
So move.
Support. Councilmember Ashford, supported by Mayor Pro Tem Archibald. Is there any questions on any of the payments? We'll take the vote.
Councilmember Lamb?
Yes.
Councilmember Mosherak?
Yes.
Councilmember Pemberton?
Yes.
Councilmember Ruiz?
Yes.
Councilmember Archibald?
Yes.
Councilmember Ashford?
Yes.
Mayor Rep.
Yes. Item 2.
Approving the proposal with DLZ Michigan Incorporated for engineering services to complete the load rating calculations for the 10th Street Bridge.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Councilmember Pemberton, supported by
Lamb.
Lamb. I didn't quite just get it out yet.
Madam Mayor and Council, we're required to do the load rating This group has done all of our inspections. They're very familiar with our bridge. If you remember, about 2 or 3 years ago, we actually reconstructed, to a certain degree, that bridge. We fixed the pins that hold the bridge together. That will have some effect on the load rating, should improve it greatly. And so this will allow us to get that new and improved calculations and get that submitted to MDOT. But we made a significant investment in that bridge just a few short years ago, and we'd like to take that into account.
Is there any other questions?
Yes. You know, I know, and this is probably a question I have to save it for the next one, too, in Resolution 3. You know, and these, when we are approving these, you know, they're not any dollar figures, costs. Is there a ballpark?
This one is $23,679.
Oh, pretty good, okay. So you got the answer for the next one, too, right?
I come prepared.
Okay, you better, because I'll get you, okay.
Small little fact, if you guys remember the bridge collapse in another state,
Yeah,
that was the same type of pin we replaced on the 10th Street Bridge.
really?
So there was kind of a reason why we replaced it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just want to know, because when you're approving, you know, resolution
Yep.
and it's blank, you know, you don't know what it's
It
going
is
to
in
cost.
it is in the resolution.
It is, where is that?
It's in the second to the last paragraph.
Oh, okay, it is, 23,679.
That's why he came up with the answer so
Oh,
quick.
okay. Oh, okay,
He's trying to say
Okay.
it off the
Yeah.
top of his head, but
okay. All right, that's my bad, okay.
is there any other
Oh, you-
question?
Excuse me, okay, just let me clarify myself, I'm not going crazy or getting old, it's just that I was looking at the next one.
The next one.
The next one didn't
Correct.
have it, and that's what I was
And
saying.
at the last meeting, I did not have that total for you.
Right, and
And I
so
learned
I-
my lesson, so I came
Yeah,
prepared.
you know what, and I learned mine too, I thought, you know what, let me stay ahead of here, so I'm looking at this one, that's why I mentioned it first, so thank you both very much, yeah.
We will take the vote on item 2.
Councilmember Mosrak,
Yes.
Councilmember Pemberton,
Yes.
Councilmember Ruiz,
Yes.
Councilmember Archibald,
Yes.
Councilmember Ashford,
Yes.
Councilmember Lamb,
Yes.
Mayor Rep.
Yes, resolution 3.
Approving the agreement with BMJ Engineer and Surveyors Incorporated for professional design service for the Gratiot Avenue reconstruction and water main replacement project.
Is there a motion?
So move.
Support.
Councilmember Mosher, supported by Councilmember Ashford.
Now you're really going to be
Okay,
impressed with
now-
my homework. Yeah, you're really impressed with my homework
Here
on
I
this
am.
one. All right,
Okay.
so this project is going to be in 2 phases.
Oh.
Total phases, it's going to be $3,589,000 and some change estimated. The first phase is from Elmwood to Garfield, which is the next year. The year after that will be from Garfield to Holland. The first phase of the engineering cost, which is the contract you're doing right now, total for both phases is going to be $194,200 estimate. Phase 1 is $56,750. Phase 2 is $137,450. We are receiving for this entire $3.5 million project, $1.7 million in federal funds to help with paving.
Oh, wow.
That'll be broken down in $656,000 in Phase 1 and $1,066,000 in Phase 2.
Wow.
So we don't want to take down all of that stretch of road in one season, so we'll break it up in 2. BMJ is a local firm. They have offices right here in the city of Port Huron. They do excellent work for us. We feel that we do what's called a request for qualifications. So we don't base it on price. We score the firms based on qualifications. They scored the highest for this, the best qualified to do this job. So it's nice to give to a local company.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Did you say they were going to start next year on the actual construction?
Yes. Yes, Phase 1.
year.
Now, they're doing a complete streets as well, so there'll be $850,000 in water work and then $155,000 in sewer work between the 2 phases. So when we go in there, we're going to make sure this is a long-term fix. And that's some of the oldest water main in the city.
Oh, okay, so it's giving you opportunity to correct all that stuff as you.
Yep.
Okay.
And just in case anyone has concerns in the design process, we are keeping that road the same width, because not only do you have the park on one side of the street, you also have a church on the other side of the street in Phase 1. And if we were to take away that on-street parking, there would be no parking for the park or the church. So we will rebuild it to current size.
Okay. Is there any other questions or comments? We'll take the vote.
Councilmember Pemberton,
Yes.
Councilmember Ruiz,
Yes.
Councilmember Archibald,
Yes.
Councilmember Ashford,
Yes.
Councilmember Lamb,
Yes.
Councilmember Mosrak,
Yes.
Mayor Rep.
Yes, we'll move on to item 4.
Authorizing the issuance of general obligation limited tax refunding bonds, Series 2021.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Support. Mayor Pro Tem Archibald, supported by Councilmember Ashford and James.
Yeah, this is our refinancing. This is not where we're issuing new debt. We're essentially taking advantage of current interest rates, and we'll be able to go to bid and hopefully have a lot of projected savings. So once we bid these out and get them back, we'll be able to give you a detailed cost savings. But this is refinancing current debt on a much lower interest rate.
Any questions for Mr. Freed? We will take the vote.
Councilmember Ruiz?
Yes.
Councilmember Archibald?
Yes.
Councilmember Ashford?
Yes.
Councilmember Lamb?
Yes.
Councilmember Mosherak?
Yes.
Councilmember Pemberton?
Yes.
Mayor Rapp?
Yes. Item 5.
Authorizing the issuance of general obligation limited tax bonds, Series 2021, for improvements to the city's sanitary sewer system.
Is there a motion?
So move.
Councilmember, supported by Councilmember Pemberton.
Madam Mayor and Council, this is authorizing for us to begin the process of issuing up to $13.5 million for capital improvement bonds for wastewater. Now, this will also go back in time, and we're going to look at the projects we've already done and find out which ones make sense to put on a longer horizon, and we'll grab those in that as well. But it's up to $13.5 million. We'll get the full total when we actually go through and look at what we're going to finance, what we need to finance. Just because you authorize it doesn't mean we actually borrow it. We do a cost analysis with our rate-making consultant to figure how can we finance in a way that, one, makes sense over the useful lifespan of the asset, but also in a way that allows us to keep rates low. We use financing to allow us to keep water and sewer rates low, because instead of paying for it all at once, you pay for the cost over the entire lifespan of the asset, which will be about 30 years.
So this is just a positioning strategy?
Correct. There's some things that we don't think are appropriate for bonding, but then some projects are like the wastewater plant that will last 40 or 50 years. That makes sense to finance out on a longer horizon. That way, all the users over the life of the asset help pay for it rather than all the users today.
Smart.
Any questions for Mr. Freed? Thank you. We will take the vote.
Councilmember Archibald?
Yes.
Councilmember Ashford?
Yes.
Councilmember Lamb?
Yes.
Councilmember Mosherak?
Yes.
Councilmember Pemberton?
Yes.
Councilmember Ruiz?
Yes.
Mayor Rapp?
Yes. Resolution 6.
Adopting an adjustment to the parking violation fines in the surrounding neighborhood of Lakeside Park from Memorial Day through Labor Day.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Who moved? I'm sorry. Terry?
Terry moved, I supported,
Council-
yes.
Councilmember Lamb, supported by Councilmember Mosherak. We're sitting so far apart, sometimes it's really hard. I guess I have a question right off the bat. How did you come up with $103?
Well, we looked at what other communities. Couple things. One, $3 is for the processing fee, because we use an outside company to helps us collect
Okay.
the fee. So it's very difficult when you write someone a parking ticket, unless you're really willing to go after and collect them on that. So it's difficult. So we use a $3 fee to work with a firm that helps us with all of our fines. So really, we raise it from 20 to 100. And the issue is, at $20, you could just leave it there and pay the ticket, because it's the same as the gate fee. At $40, you're not likely to move your vehicle. At $50, still not likely to move your vehicle after a whole day of beach going. We find that $100 is kind of what other communities are doing, and it's a deterrent. Like, we don't want to write a ticket. We don't want to tow your vehicle. Ain't no one got time for that. So it's like, just go park in the right spot. So it is a punitive measure. It is a fine. We're hoping that people get the message that do not park where you're supposed to.
But nothing's changed about the actual zones that they can't park in, correct?
No,
It's
we
same
did
as-
address the towaway zones last
Yeah.
time. That's for safety issues.
Yeah.
Mayor Rapp.
Yes, Councilmember Mosherak.
James, I'm just wondering, you say surrounding neighborhoods, do you guys kind of have a mapped idea of where you're focusing? Direct streets that are viewable from the park, or are we going further?
Yep.
Any other questions for Mr. Freed?
We're hopeful we don't have to write any of these tickets.
Yeah.
But the issue we had last year was people were like, well, how much is the fine? We're like, $20. And they're like, well, that's the same as the gate, so keep an eye on my car type thing. So it really defeated the purpose.
I agree. Okay, if there's no further questions, we will take the vote.
Councilmember Ashford?
Yes?
Councilmember Lamb?
Yes.
Councilmember Mosherak?
Yes.
Councilmember Pemberton?
Yes.
Councilmember Ruiz?
Yes.
Councilmember Archibald?
Yes.
Mayor Rep?
Yes. Item 7.
Authorizing the city clerk to schedule a special election to be held on August 3rd, 2021, on the proposed initiatory petition submitted by Progress for Michigan 2020 to amend the citizens' initiative passed by the electors on November 3rd, 2020.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Councilmember Lamb? Is there a second? Is there a second? With no second, there's no action. But I must ask the question, what happens?
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm Alan Francis from Gary Fletcher's office. Fortunately or unfortunately, I can tell you what happens because a similar situation happened in August. The city charter provides that when sufficient signatures are presented to the clerk, which they have been, of a petition to ordinance, the clerk is obligated to bring it to council. The charter requires council to act within 30 days to adopt the ordinance or to set it on for a ballot. We circle back to about, 9 months ago or so, when the first petition ordinance was up. The timing of it was such that it could not come to council prior to the deadline to be on the ballot. Our position at that time was that if you don't meet the charter timelines and without the council consideration, that a petition's not entitled to go on the ballot without checking all the boxes under the charter. The Court of Appeals, Judge West here agreed with us, the Court of Appeals disagreed, and the Supreme Court didn't take the case. So I can tell you that the way the law is now, especially applicable to Port Huron, is that if sufficient signatures were presented, which they were, it's entitled to go on the ballot, whether this council takes action or not. So it'll be on the ballot, and I think the deadline's tomorrow for certification. So we're at another tight time frame where you wouldn't have had 30 days that you'd have under the charter either way. But if no action is taken, the law says as it is now, it goes on the ballot. So it's August 3rd, I believe, is the election
Yes.
date.
So it's not going to make any difference, basically, unless the council wanted to adopt the
Correct.
ordinance.
Correct,
And that nobody made a motion to do that, yes.
correct.
That would be the only other thing then.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mayor Rep, I have a question. Do we have to pass it in order to have discussion or ask some questions for
Yes,
clarification?
we have to have the motion on the floor in order to talk about the item. If not, it's done. So if somebody, you can vote it down, but like you said, it's going to be back, it's going to be on anyways, but you can't talk about the item if it's not before us, and there wasn't a second to put it before us.
And can someone put forth a second in that, now, in order to do that?
If the person who moved, which was Councilmember Lamb, wants to still have her motion, somebody else can second it, yes. If she wants to make the
Robert
motion
rules, you
again.
can do that?
I would like to
Yeah,
discuss.
well, it was never voted down. It wasn't voted down, it
Well,
was
when
just
somebody
hanging
don't
out
say
there.
anything, how can you down you go?
That's why I was asking.
Meaning it wasn't, I asked the question
Oh,
because
yeah, but
nobody,
that's what I'm saying.
I asked the
You went
question
over that.
about what would happen if nobody voted on it. That
Right.
was the answer to the question. I believe it still can have a second though. Am I not right?
Counselor says,
Yeah, yeah, you can still get a second. It was never taken off the floor, it was just, she made the motion, nobody seconded it. I asked the question as to what happens.
Yeah, well, I don't know if we reading the same Robert. Okay, he must got a different middle name. Okay.
I
Right.
don't believe it was taken off.
No.
Oh, did,
I may have missed it.
No.
Oh,
we-
okay,
we're
because
still
you were
talking
given a summation of
Yeah,
an ending.
Of my question.
There's no second.
Okay, no,
As of
I'm,
right now, there's no second. What is the question if there is no second?
That's what I understood.
Yeah. So I asked what would be happening if there
okay.
was no second to it.
okay,
So
I
we
just
really
want to make
haven't
sure
finished
that
it.
we legal here.
Oh, no, we're,
Mayor,
Okay.
I'd like to second the motion.
okay, so we do have a second from Council, or Mayor Pro Tem Archibald. So yes, we can discuss it. And
Madam
yes,
Mayor
go
and
ahead.
council, just to let you know, this was not a budgeted item. This outside group who has brought this petition will now cost the taxpayers $20,000 to hold a special election. There was no election scheduled. The last ordinance that they brought has brought on significant legal challenges to the city. We are being sued by multiple parties for an ordinance that we did not write. This outside group is not providing our legal defense fund. The taxpayers of Port Huron are paying the legal cost on these lawsuits. We believe that if this goes before the ballot and does pass, that we will face significant litigation once again that we will have to pay for. So this outside group, which is launching this campaign, has no ties to Citizen Support Huron, is costing us literally hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal bills, and it will continue to rack up.
Mayor,
Yes, Councilman.
James, were you contacted by anybody from Progress for Michigan that they were interested in coming and hearing our questions or being,
The clerk was made aware, did speak with them, that they were advising that they were going to be here tonight, but I do not believe.
Is-
Oh,
are
we
you
do have a
there?
representative for Progress Michigan.
Would you mind coming forward? Could we ask you some questions? A little bit out of our, but we have that right to ask some questions, so. If you could give us your name, please, that would be.
Of course.
And
Good
where you're
evening,
from?
Madam Mayor, ladies and gentlemen in the council. Michael Woodyard is my name. I'm an attorney, and I'm appearing on behalf of the group Progress for Michigan 2020.
And where are you from? I'm sorry.
My office is in Canton, Michigan.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to open it up if the council has any questions that they'd like to ask before I jump into.
Yes, Mayor, I have a couple of questions that I would like to ask. So the city originally had a marijuana ordinance that this group obviously didn't care for, didn't like how it was written, came before us at the last hour with a proposal that went on the ballot. You proposed that, so my question is, if that was your proposal, why is it that you don't like it now? Why are we getting a new one? What happens if you don't like the results of the next one? And how many times can you just keep coming back and making us pay for an election for something that we had already solved and had an ordinance to govern on our own?
So I think that the actions that are being taken by my client are grounded in the charter of the city. I mean, these are not some things that's just being done on our own, whim. These are actions that are permissible by the city charter. And I guess it's important, I think, to recognize that whether or not Progress for Michigan 2020 was an engine behind the initiatory petition in November of 2020, the citizens of the city really rallied in overwhelming numbers to support it. So whether or not it acted to, as you say, replace a city ordinance or not, it received the overwhelming support of the voters. So I think that that's a portion of this that's not been mentioned up until now, and I think it's very important to recognize that.
But you didn't answer my question on if they wrote the ordinance and the petition and what the ballot language and what they wanted, but now they're not happy with it, and so they're rewriting it. That's the bigger concern. It's not whether or not the residents passed something that they may or may not have been aware of what it was. They simply wanted marijuana to be eligible in the city.
Right.
They didn't necessarily understand or know or get into the nuts and bolts of the language. My question specifically is, if this group wrote the language, why is it now they are not happy with it and want to change it yet again?
I believe what we would like to do at this point, and the reason we're putting forth this amendatory language, is to bring the focus on medical marijuana as opposed to recreational marijuana. And the proposed amendment does just that. It allows the creation of legal sale of medical marijuana products in the city on a timeline that really wasn't contemplated under the original initiative. And so I think that if the question is specifically what is different about this, which is kind of how I understand what you're asking, why are we doing this, what is different? It puts a focus on the medical marijuana, and frankly, the fact that it's before this body this evening, I think, gives the council an opportunity to really take a lead and take a page from what the voters have suggested they desire. And I think I don't know that I would go down the road of questioning whether the voters knew what they were voting for. I think that that's a dangerous road to go down. I'm going to assume that they knew what they were voting for. And that you're exactly right, council member, is that they want to have legal access to marijuana products in the city. And we think that focusing on medical marijuana first will satisfy that urgent need.
So as a follow-up to that, this changes, well, the way I read this anyway, it changes the scoring system, it changes quite a bit, and I understand that if this were to pass, those who have already been given a license, those will be terminated. So part of the language in here ensures that if we follow state law, this is going to reduce lawsuits to the city. But do you not expect all of them will sue us if we terminate those licenses because now we have a new ordinance and a new scoring system?
Sure, I understand the question, and I think that anytime you get into a question of whether something is going to promote litigation in today's society, I think the answer is yes. Whatever it is, fill in the blank. So to your question, though, specifically on this point, I think it's hard to say, and I think it's hard to say for this specific reason. Councilmember, you used the word license, and what our amendatory language proposes is that what are referred to as provisional licenses under the current regime, what are referred to as provisional licenses will be terminated, and all of those people will be free, of course, to apply under the new scoring rubrics that are developed by the city. We think that brings the focus back to where we think it should be, which is on the medical marijuana, and allows those licensees to continue to develop their properties.
So those with the provisional licenses that get canceled are most likely going to disagree with that, and they're going to sue. So is this group prepared to indemnify the city on all of those costs?
No.
And I'll be honest, I could go on and on and on, but I want to open it up to other council members because I'm sure they all have some questions as well.
Did you?
She asked my question that I was going to ask
Oh,
next. Yeah,
okay.
If we were going to be indemnified, but if the city would be indemnified, but for cost and fees and damages. And I just, I don't know if it's so much a personal note, I asked literally hundreds of people, it was almost a crusade of our residents and voters, why they voted this in, and they, without a doubt, were confused. They thought one of two things: they were losing marijuana altogether, or they were getting it. In the 11th hour, as this proposal was written, a lot of people didn't understand the language, how it was written out. So I do, in my opinion, I think a lot of the voters just didn't understand the proposal. They didn't realize we already had it, and we had it figured out as a city, and we were good to go with that. And then this came in beyond the 11th hour, actually, and didn't leave it up to the council to decide whether it was going to be on the petition or not. So that's just my comment on that.
Mayor Rep,
Yes.
I'd like to just echo that point. I think your presumption that the voters knew what they were voting for with the misleading advertising that came from your organization just shows how out of touch with what our residents desired your organization is.
Thank you, sir.
Well, yeah, I'm not a fan, of this anyway, but I would like to know, your proposal, is it all about just putting the medical before the recreational? Is that what you're saying? Case in point, because it just seemed like some hidden agendas are flying around here, underneath here. What is the elevator part that we need to know? What are you trying to tell us with this petition?
The proposed amendment, council member, does exactly that. It permits the provisioning centers, which is the phrase used to describe the medical marijuana. It permits those which have already been awarded provisional licenses.
Correct.
Permits them to continue the process, apply to the state for their license, apply to the zoning board for their variances or what they need to do.
Okay.
And at the same time, it suspends progress on the recreational until such time as a scoring rubric is developed by the city. And that's the focus that we think is appropriate. That's,
Okay.
you know,
So I'm with you right there. And so on what grounds are you suspending the recreational part? What grounds are you giving us to understand why should we, so don't get me wrong, I'm not for it, but, or against it.
True.
But what grounds do what's the case?
Well, as was so aptly described by the city attorney in its memorandum to the clerk upon submission of this language, it's that recreational scoring rubric that has occasioned in almost an entire measure, that's almost the entire reason for the litigation right now.
Okay.
And it's our belief that, that those are not, well, they're called provisional license, which is, defined as temporary. And as I described for the medical licensing, for the provisioning center licensing, there's still a variety of steps that have to be accomplished before a business is operational. So they're temporary provisional licenses, that's what they're called. And so it's our belief that focusing on the medical marijuana, allowing those businesses to continue to develop, provide that service to the citizens of the community, and provide the city the opportunity to create the scoring rubric for the recreational is what our proposed amendment accomplishes.
Okay. And what in your nobler sense that you think that we would tell people after they've already voted to have it, to have the recreational, I mean, don't you think in a nobler sense we owe that to them if they, vote, everybody has the right to vote and they voted? Or what's your take on that?
I think that's a very good question. I think that, setting aside all of the other issues, which are obviously have a great deal of merit, but to that point specifically, council member, I think that what you would tell that voter is that this proposed amendment allows the medical marijuana to go full steam ahead. And what we, I suppose, didn't anticipate was the raft of what you might call sore loser lawsuits that the application process occasioned. I mean, there was 27 or 28 businesses that filed applications.
Oh, okay.
And as a result of the clerk's diligent efforts in, going through those, most of them were not awarded a provisional license. And many of them then followed on and filed lawsuits. So,
Oh, okay.
Mayor, up if I could, unless somebody that hasn't spoken.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Does anybody else want to speak?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Councilmember Ashford led right into just a final comment. And as you keep talking about medical versus recreational, the residents of Port Huron overwhelmingly voted for recreational marijuana. And so if I could be, I'm going to be very blunt. What this sounds, feels, and looks like to me is that the people who put the petition on the ballot didn't win in the scoring system, so now we want to change the rules. And it's the residents of the city that voted for recreational marijuana that are now going to be without what they voted for. So the whole thing to me stinks. Thank you.
You kind of took the words out of my mouth, because that was what I was going to say next, was the fact that, when medical marijuana came forward several years ago, we opted out of it and did not approve it for the city of Port Huron. We never received any overwhelming, complaints or people coming forward asking us to have medical marijuana at council meetings. But they surely wanted the recreational marijuana, and now you're saying that the medical marijuana is more important. So all those people that expected that once the ordinance was passed, they were gonna be able to purchase recreational marijuana are not. It's only people that have a medical reason, correct? If this passes?
Initially, yes.
So now, this is dragged on for well over, well, coming up, well, next fall, it'll be coming up on a year.
We're in 7
Uh,
months now.
Yeah, and had we stuck with what we had in place in the first place, that the council adopted, we would have had the licenses in place, and people in our city who wanted it would have been able to get it, medical or otherwise. Because you don't, obviously, if you only have medical, recreational cannot be purchased, but vice versa, if you have a medical reason for it, you can still go buy it recreationally. So, I think that it's held up the residents of our city who, whether I believe in it or not, the residents voted overwhelmingly because they did not understand, because all of the advertising was, vote yes for marijuana. It's gonna bring jobs to our city. Basically, that's what it said. It never said a word about the rest of it. And now and I agree that they asked to, saying about lawsuits, the same people are gonna sue, and then the language is gonna change again, and go out and get another petition, and it's just gonna go on and on and on. We could be years and never, ever see it here in the city of Port Huron, and I think that's a shame for our residents. Who is Progress for Michigan? Who is the group? It's a group.
It's a ballot initiative committee that's registered under the state of Michigan.
Are any of the people that applied for a license, are they part of that group?
I don't know the answer to that question.
It's quite possible.
Like I said, there was 27 businesses that applied.
So, in other words, the very people that are putting it on the ballot could well be benefiting from this.
Madam Mayor, I don't know the answer to that
Okay.
question.
But, no, I think I do, but that's okay. I just think it's a shame, because it just keeps what should have happened, and we did a lot of research and put forth something that was very palatable to most of us and to our residents for the city of Port Huron, and now we have an outside group with outside interests trying to run our city and do it. And when you get into the scoring system, now you don't like the scoring system that they put forward in the first place. And you're leaving it back to be dumped in our lap to, we're supposed to come up with a scoring system that makes everybody happy? It's probably not.
Well, I think
So-
anytime there's winners or losers.
Oh, regardless, I mean, you gotta keep it as fair as you can, but obviously, whoever proposed this ordinance in the first place and wrote the language thought what they put forward was fair. It didn't turn out that way. So, you have people suing because they didn't think it was. I just think it's a sad day for our city when we've got outside groups who are running it. So, I realize there's nothing we can do about it. The ballot question is there. Unfortunately, the ballot question does not have to be spelled out on the ballot. So that's where I think the simple little question of, do you want marijuana in your city and it will provide jobs? That's all that's on the ballot. I'm not saying it verbatim, I forget exactly. Then you can walk over to the poster that's in the corner of the wall at your polling place and read all the language in little tiny print on a big thing. Do you think every voter went over there and read that? No. I can guarantee you they didn't, and they're not going to read this either. All they're going to say is that the city is going to save money by not being sued, and that's a good reason to pass it. It just seems unfair. I don't know if our city manager, did you have a question? Okay.
Do you have a question for me or no?
Yeah, we have, Steve.
Okay.
Would you entertain comments from?
No, this really is the time for the council and
Madam
because they're
Mayor and Council, I just want to
proposing
point out, I've been listening quietly here, I just want to clarify what, the notion that we want to bring medical marijuana to the forefront, that's what we've done. Medical marijuana has been scored, 5 provisional licenses have been issued. So essentially, we like the scoring system for medical marijuana, which I assume are probably his clients. However, the scoring system for recreational marijuana, you can throw that out. So keep the scoring system for the medical marijuana and go ahead and issue those licenses, but for everything else, throw it out. So, I mean, I would question if you currently represent any of the license holders for medical marijuana, but it just seems odd to me that the scoring system works well for these specific licenses, which we're going to issue. This is not speeding up anything. Medical marijuana was being issued. These were being issued. So this isn't speeding up anything, so it absolutely makes no sense what was said and doesn't jive with the two ballot languages.
Did you have a comment more to make
If
on
I
that?
may, very, very quickly, yes, thank you, and thank you, Mr. Manager. So the distinction between the scoring systems is that state law requires that recreational marijuana, everything about it, recreational marijuana, be scored on a competitive basis. That's what the language in the state law says. There's no such requirement in the medical licensing. So while the recreational licenses have to take into account a competitive scheme designed to sort out the business best suited to manage a business in the community under the recreational statute, there's no such license, or no such requirement under the medical licenses. So there is a distinction. And that's one of the reasons why we thought that separating it by virtue of this amendment would help to advance the cause. Because as the city attorney has pointed out, the sore loser litigation is occasioned by the people on the recreational side who are complaining that the scoring system is not appropriately competitive. I'm summarizing 4 different lawsuits, but.
And that's still in court right now.
And that's the other thing too,
So
to
why
follow
couldn't
up on the
we
point.
see what happened?
Well, that's the thing. Everything is stopped right now because of that lawsuit.
Right.
Not just the recreational, but the judge ordered a freeze on everything, including the medical. So it's not going forward either, until something happens. And that's one of the reasons why we think this is.
So you're thinking if this passes, then that's kind of goes outside the judge's realm then?
Well, I think it may serve to address one of the questions that's at issue.
Mayor, so are we to understand that this is tied up in court and we could pay $20,000 for an election in August that the court could then overrule or change or do differently?
Madam Council Member, our position is that the separating of the recreational and the medical will serve to provide a streamlined basis to activate medical marijuana sales in the city of Port Huron. The proposed amendment that we have specifies that those shall proceed, and it's only after those have begun operating that the recreational will begin.
However, if the lawsuit goes differently in court, this would be irrelevant. And we would have paid $20,000 for an election we did not need.
I don't know what's going to happen. Nobody knows what's going to happen with the lawsuit.
So is this not premature?
I don't think so.
Mr. Francis?
I see Mr. Francis.
And will they pay for
I
it?
think,
Yeah,
I
that's
think
okay.
maybe it's important. I'll give a synopsis of the lawsuit if I can and where we stand. So there originally was one, maybe 2 plaintiffs at about the same time that did not receive licenses that filed a lawsuit. A couple weeks ago now, I believe it was, maybe 3 weeks ago, Judge Lane heard preliminary arguments on it, and what Judge Lane did at that time was entered a preliminary injunction stopping. I don't want to say all licenses because it's not all licenses. The one that comes to mind is micro businesses were not stopped, and the reason micro businesses, which are adult use businesses, were not part of the injunction was because there was an unlimited number of micro business licenses under statute. So there's no competitive process that was used, or no scoring system that really was relevant, because if you applied, you got the license. So council's correct that there is a statutory difference between the competitive process that's required for adult use or recreational and no statutory language as to how the city's supposed to pick medical. I think one of the issues with the ordinance, and I'm not saying anything I didn't say to Judge Lane, is that the way the ordinance is currently written is it allows 7 unique business facility addresses. So when you look at how it is, the scoring system is almost a de facto applicable to everything because you can only have so many addresses that have a site. So once you have a medical license, is that address is the only one available for retail. And same for consumption establishments. So everything's tied together under the ordinance. And one of the things this petition does, in addition to everything that's been talked about, to me that's critical, is it would, if passed, remove section 4C of the ordinance. And 4C is what limited the business facility addresses to 7. It's attempting to untie these from medical marijuana because right now, all licenses are tied together. So by default, the scoring system is applicable to all of them. And so we have a court order saying no action's going to be taken. With city purposes, that means no zoning permits, no zoning approvals, no final licenses. The injunction also advises that the state marijuana regulatory agency isn't to submit any final licenses. I have a little bit of a disagreement as to what a provisional license is. Because a provisional license that was awarded to these recreational users that would be taken away, it is called provisional, but what it is it's a right to get a final license under the ordinance. All they need to do is go through Mr. Haynes and clear the planning commission and zoning and then send their letter to the state. And then once the state says you're up and running, provisional is stricken out and it's just a license. So it's not like there's somebody else waiting in the wings if they're provisionals. It's not a conditional license. It's really a provisional license. So it's in place until the state says you have the final one.
So what happens, if I might ask, the judge has put everything in abeyance and she's waiting to make a decision
Correct.
at some time.
Correct.
So what happens if the decision is made after the election has happened and the election approves this, but the judge makes a different decision?
Well, one of the things I wrote in the opinion letter, it was the limiting nature of our opinion. So unfortunately, courts won't consider sort of challenges to a petition ordinance until it is passed. They don't want hypothetical considerations. So nobody could go to Judge Lane now and say, well, what would you do if this happened? Would you apply the new petition or the old language? And then you have the issue of what rights the provisional license holders have who would be terminated. I frankly don't see how this doesn't end up in more litigation, and I really don't have an answer as to what Judge Lane would do with it. Alternatively, if in June or July, Judge Lane holds a hearing and she says, as I believe, that Cindy did everything correctly in scoring, and if Judge Lane, after hearing from Progress for Michigan, who's a party to the lawsuit, what Judge Lane said is, I don't know if these criteria meet the competitive process because I, as city attorney, and Mr. Freed, and we don't have legislative findings as to why the 8 or 9 criteria were important. That's Progress for Michigan. So Judge Lane's giving them an opportunity, and she's bringing in all applicants, she has said, are parties to this lawsuit. They're allowed to be parties. If you applied, if you were granted a license or denied, you're allowed to be in this lawsuit. Your voice can be heard. And she's going to, at some period of time, hear from the parties, hear from Progress for Michigan, and make a determination as to whether those criteria meet a competitive process or not. If she decides they do, we've awarded the licenses.
And it's a moot point.
Correct.
Now, we're still
Subject to appeal, of course, but that could be the decision she makes, and that's the decision Progress for Michigan is fighting for in the lawsuit.
Which means that, yes, could be all for naught, and we spend money on an
Correct.
election that means nothing.
And I can't tell you when that is going to be. There's no other dates, but that is very well a possibility.
Okay, does anybody have any more questions for any of the entities that are, for any of this?
I have one more just directly for Progress for Michigan. In light of all this information, I want to understand what we're all talking around point blankly here is why is it your client believes the city residents of Port Huron should pay for this election rather than waiting out this process? What is so important that this has to have a special election in August for your clients, and how is that better for the city of Port Huron, since that's what you clearly care so much about?
So I think that anytime you begin to try to guess about how litigation is going to turn out, it's a bad idea. And so, frankly, I think that my client doesn't know what's going to happen with the litigation, doesn't know if it's going to be resolved and then go to an appeal, and then an appeal takes another year. I don't know, and I don't think anybody knows.
Sure, but you're saying that this is necessary to have a special election, right? This isn't going to be a part of any other election cycle that's already existing. The residents are spending $20,000 because you need a special election. Why? November's a few months out?
Right. So, my client determined that moving on at this time frame was the best time frame.
For Port Huron, for the citizens of Port Huron, right? The best time frame for them.
Well, I'm not going to spar with you on that.
I'm asking directly, you're saying the best time frame for whom?
It's our view that the proposed amendment resolves a number of issues, and that it puts the focus back on the medical.
That's not an answer to my question. I asked you, why August? Why now? Why is that the best thing for Port Huron?
Well, sir, the charter provides for the opportunity to launch these initiated petitions. There's this lawsuit that has frozen everything in place, and it was my client's view that moving forward at this point in time would best serve to advance the ability to provide legal medical marijuana. So,
We just established over and over, actually, that it doesn't. It slows the whole process even further. So again, it's still, you haven't listed one reason yet that Progress for Michigan believes it is important for the citizens of Port Huron to spend $20,000 on an election when we're months away from an already scheduled election. So, and then you're saying out of one side of your mouth that you don't want to speculate on litigation, and it has nothing to do with litigation, and then on the other side of your mouth that it's going to help speed up the process that's in limbo in litigation. So I'm just really trying to understand, I'm not trying to spar with you, I'm trying to get a direct answer from you. You're presenting a picture that your outside entity, Progress for Michigan, cares about what is overwhelmingly supported by the citizens of Port Huron. And I doubt if I were to take a poll, if there was a poll tomorrow in the Times-Herald newspaper asking the citizens of Port Huron if they would like to spend $20,000 of their tax money on a special election for this, I highly doubt that that's where they'd land. So I'm trying to understand what you're putting forward here. Why is it so important that this happens now?
sure. I really feel as though I've answered your question as well as I can.
That is probably true.
Sir, just
Yes,
one last
did you have
question.
one last question?
Just one last one. I'm sorry, what was your name, sir?
Michael Woodyard, yeah.
Oh, okay. You understand our passion and representation. That's who we are. We're public official servants for the people, and we need to look out what's best for them. Even though people like me, I didn't support the recreational marijuana, and I still don't, and the medical is a buzzword to me, but when you talk about hitting people's pocketbooks and stuff, it's something that has already passed, that is kind of like a hard pill to swallow. And I don't expect for you to have the answer for your clients because, what they feel and what they want, because you are representing them. You're not representing the city of Port Huron. That's the truth. That is your answer, and it's okay to say that, So like I said, I haven't, supported, and I never will. I go to my grave, I just don't do support the marijuana in a recreational way. It's too much history for me on a personal basis. But as a public official, tonight, it appears it's going on the ballot anyway, okay, and we'll see what they say. And I can hear from my fellow colleagues up here, we're doing a whole lot of presupposing of what's gonna happen, nobody knows what's gonna happen, you know? And I don't get so caught up in the money factor, you know, in those kind of terms, you know? I have enough faith to wait to see what happens, and if it turns out like it's supposed to, then so be it. But I do think it's, you know, realistically somewhat of a disservice, you know, to people that did support that. So I'd just like to thank you very much.
I value your comments. I value all of the comments. Thank you very much for sharing.
Thank you. We don't take any audience at this point. I know you're waving your hand like that, we don't. We have the item before us, and I guess before we take the vote, I just want to confirm, if it's voted down, it doesn't make any difference, correct?
Either way, according to the Court of Appeals last year, this is going on the ballot.
No matter what we say?
Correct. The signatures have been,
Okay. You have to vote.
unless adopted,
Yes.
it's going on the ballot.
Yep, okay. Yeah, we could adopt it if we wanted to, right? Okay, but right now what's before us is to schedule the election, and we'll take the vote.
Councilmember Lamb?
No.
Councilmember Mosherak?
No.
Councilmember Pemberton?
No.
Councilmember Ruiz?
No.
Councilmember Archibald?
No.
Councilmember Ashford?
Yes.
Mayor Rep?
No. The item does fail, but I know it's going to go on anyways. Correct. Okay, we'll move on to ordinances. Number 1.
Second reading and enactment. An ordinance to amend Chapter 46, Traffic and Vehicles, Article 3, Parking, Stopping, and Standing, and Article 4, Impoundment of Vehicles of the Port Huron Code of Ordinances for the purpose of creating a no parking tow-away zone.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Mayor Pro Tem Archibald, supported by Councilmember Ashford. Is there any questions? We will take the vote.
Councilmember Mosherak?
Yes.
Councilmember Pemberton?
Yes.
Councilmember Ruiz?
Yes.
Councilmember Archibald?
Yes.
Councilmember Ashford?
Yes.
Councilmember Lamb?
Yes.
Mayor Rep?
Yes, that concludes our regular agenda. Announcements. We do have a special meeting, council does tomorrow night, to discuss the budget. It's our workshop, it'll be held at 5 p.m. It will be in this room, the public meeting room. Also, one other thing I was asked to mention, Mid-City Nutrition is having its groundbreaking for its new facility on Griswold, 800 block of Griswold. It starts at 4 o'clock on Wednesday, May the 12th, and they want council to know that they were invited to attend, as well as the public. So I just said I would pass that along. And if there's anything else to bring before the council this evening, then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Meeting adjourned.